So, hi everyone. I'm here today with a very special guest, Jane Leibowitz, who is the Human Rights Manager for Australia for the FIFA Women's World Cup. And we had a chance to sit down and talk a little bit about the work that's been done around the human rights requirements and opportunities for this tournament. So one of the things, so I wanted to ask you three questions.
Sure.
The first question is, what's interesting about this tournament is when they went to do the risk assessment for this tournament, it's co-hosted with Aotearoa, New Zealand.
Great.
Is that right?
You got it.
Okay.
You got it, Mary.
All right. Is that the National Human Rights Institutions, which are independent, did the risk assessment.
Exactly.
Talk about that.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Mary, and hello, everyone. I think that was a very, very appropriate and meaningful move to use the government human rights commissions in both countries to do that. I think it gives a credibility and it gives an independence and an accountability that you don't always see necessarily in some sporting organisations. That was a really, really positive move by FIFA to engage with, I guess, human rights experts in the field who really understand the local environments and really understand both, in this case, the risks and the opportunity to, I guess, use the visibility of the tournament to showcase what can be done and what can be done better. So it was a very positive move, and it has provided, I guess, a blueprint not only for, I guess, less so for the human rights team who are familiar with those issues, but more for the rest of the organisation, and to be able to refer to that and to be able to, reference that in discussions as kind of a justification for why certain approaches were taken was very, very helpful for us as we move forward with delivering on the tournament.
Terrific. So the risk assessment identified 57 risks?
Yeah, something like
that.
So
something like that. Okay, so that's a lot.
Yeah.
And it's a snapshot in time, right?
Correct.
And that changes, of course, as time moves on. But one of the things that certainly, having been down here for the past 2 weeks that I've seen, a lot of, two issues have sort of popped to the, I would say, mainstream awareness of the event. One is inclusion of First Nations people and Indigenous communities here in both countries, actually. And the second is gender equity, essentially, and working conditions. I'd like to drill into the first one, if I could ask you a question. So given that, what was the sort of risk profile that popped out on that? And then how did you approach doing that work? And what did you learn?
Great. So, I mean, absolutely, probably one of the biggest categories of risk was around precisely what we were talking about before, around tokenism. And we know that we have two host countries with such a rich and diverse and unique First Nations cultures.
One of them's the oldest in the world.
Correct.
Right?
Australia's
65,000?
Anywhere between 65 and 80,000 years old. The oldest living Indigenous culture in the world is in Australia. And then we have in Aotearoa this beautifully visible, present First Nations culture that is existing and very much living and breathing there. We have sort of language revitalization, all sorts of things that are happening. So you really feel it and feel the spirituality of it when you arrive. And so there was a huge sort of ambition around cultural engagement, but in order to do it well and to do it meaningfully, we had to, I guess, set up the right processes and procedures around it. In this case, we're a non-Indigenous business and, a European-based organisation. And so the way that we approached that was very, very early on to set up an advisory panel of 6 women, so all women with First Nations and Maori, to really guide from a strategic perspective about the coming together of these two cultures and how that might translate operationally. So it was a very special thing to be a part of, to see these sort of powerful Maori and First Nations women with, huge amount of cultural intelligence and huge amount of understanding of football and of government relationships and relations and all the things that go into stakeholder work, to come together to, I guess, help us realize some of that, and also to provide us kind of a touch point where we can really test some of our ideas, and we can have difficult conversations. They can say, definitely don't do that, or that's a red flag, or that's not a red flag. And I think that robustness and the dynamicness of that space enabled us to deliver and sort of raise the bar for what the ultimate outcome was. So it was super has been an unbelievable help and assistance and guidance, because only our First Nations communities can kind of advise us on how to do that.
And when you put forward sort of what the tournament could mean in terms of opportunity, what did they see as the opportunity for this tournament being hosted by these two countries? What was their idea of what legacy or the opportunity looked like?
That's a great question. I was just doing something today looking at the original terms of reference and the narrative that they're called the First Sisters of Country, that they came up with themselves. Their name, everything was kind of developed in their own terms. I think for them it was just this high visibility moment, and taking the opportunity to see their cultures coming together to plan and to share ideas around cultural protocol and how things could look
from these two countries, right?
And how you could see that coming together in an opening ceremony, how that could, from a protocol perspective look, how that could creatively look, how brand could look, all this opportunity to have this high visibility moment. And then also all, I guess, the back-end work that we did, for example, around sustainable procurement, where we were looking at First Nations and Maori suppliers and diversification of supply chains. So kind of the very noticeable things, and also the very kind of procedural things around risk mitigation, but also to what was important for them was that we were really engaging on the ground and in a grassroots way around some of this work.
Terrific. Final question.
Yes.
A bit like North America, right? This part of the world loves sport and loves to host sporting events. And, starting now, and, many events will be happening in this part of the world. And of course, you have the Brisbane 2032 Olympic Games. What do you hope this event leaves as a legacy when it comes to human rights and labor rights that will be hopefully a launch pad for where these other events and their organizations can pick up when it comes to some of the work you've done around Indigenous, with First Nations, but also in other areas? What do you want to leave for them to then pick up and advance?
I think it's, realizing that human rights work and sustainability and labor rights, all these things are big, complex topics, and we are here for a good time, not a long time, as a tournament. And so how do we, I guess from a legacy perspective, we're part of a much bigger conversation. And if we can be taking steps to show better practice and to stretch on certain things, for example, in the First Nations space, which other countries may still be further behind on the journey, if we can have, I guess, demonstrated some good practice around that can be picked up and build upon. We are, a moment in time as part of a much bigger conversation. I think from a legacy perspective, we would love to see, what we've built here improved upon, built upon, stretched upon, all those things that we keep moving forward in the much longer journey towards, reform and change that we want to ultimately see in this space.
Terrific. Jane Leibowitz, thank you so much for your time.
Oh, thanks
Good luck
so much.
with the rest of the tournament.
Oh, thank you so much for talking to me, Mary. It was great to meet you.